If you love growing hot peppers but can't necessarily stand the heat, this is a great way to use up your hot pepper harvest fresh from your garden. Today we're making fermented pepper hot sauce. Start with 2 cups of hot tap water. Make sure your tap water is not chlorinated. If it is, you'll want to use distilled water instead. We're going to add 1 tablespoon of pickling or preserving salt. Kosher salt will also work for this. Stir it up good. Make sure it dissolves completely in that warm water. Now we're going to create the base of the hot sauce. This is the flavor that will hit your tongue outside of the heat of the peppers, so this is a great opportunity to make it your own. I always begin with a Vidalia onion first, and then I add in some nice fresh garlic to really add a savory flavor to our hot sauces. Now it's time to add the peppers. You can really use whatever peppers you want, including mild peppers. In this sauce, I'm using chili peppers and red jalapenos, so this is going to be a pretty spicy sauce. You only need to rough chop the peppers, and you can leave the seeds in if you want that extra heat. Place all of your chopped foods into a jar or whatever container you plan to ferment in. We're going to top this with the saltwater brine that we made earlier in the video. Make sure you leave yourself about 1 inch of headspace, or at least enough that you can place a weight on top. This is an actual fermentation vessel that has a special lid with a hole in it and a contraption that goes on top to successfully capture those CO2 bubbles as they're released during the fermentation process. You do not necessarily have to have a special fermentation jar to do this. You can use a regular mason jar. Just know that you'll have to burp that jar daily to allow the CO2 to escape during that fermentation process. Fermentation jars are very inexpensive overall, so if this is a process that you plan on repeating, I do recommend investing in an actual fermentation jar. Place your jar on the counter outside of direct sunlight in an area that's 65 to 75 degrees to allow fermentation to take place. Within a couple days, you should notice these adorable bubbles peek up to the surface, which means fermentation is happening. Allow your jar to ferment for 7 to 14 days until you start to notice the vegetables compact on the bottom of the jar and your brine takes on a cloudy appearance. Once you're done fermenting, go ahead and dump off the top part of that brine. We're going to save that for later. Remove your weight, and then we're going to dump all of the peppers and vegetables into a blender. This is optional, but if you have seeds stuck at the bottom of your container and you like the spice, go ahead and scoop those out to include those in your sauce. Grab that brine you set aside before, and we're going to dump about half of it back in with your peppers. Now we're ready to do the first blend. Blend it until it turns into a liquidy puree. You want it to be easily pourable. At this point, it should be a very pungent sauce. Most hot sauces do use a sweetener, even if they don't outwardly taste sweet. I like to use agave or honey in mine, but you can also use sugar or other artificial sweeteners. This last part of the process is certainly the most tedious, but it is what leaves you with a nice, smooth, pourable hot sauce as a final product. Using a mesh strainer, you'll pour in small amounts of your blended pepper mash at a time, moving it side to side to allow the liquid to flow through. I keep the solids that I filter out of my hot sauce, and I use it as a concentrated chili paste for marinades and dressing. And our very last step is bottling our hot sauce. I like to save my old hot sauce containers and I reuse those for my homemade hot sauce. You can also use Tupperware or a mason jar. If you want your hot sauce to keep fermenting for a little bit, you can store it at room temperature for a couple weeks, but once you're ready for it to stop fermenting, you'll want to stick it in the fridge where it will be shelf stable for 6 months to a year. Enjoy your homemade hot sauce!